What's good, everybody? My name's Alckemy. I was just fiddling around with Phase 4, and that's what we're going to be covering today. I'm going to be making a patch from scratch to kind of walk you through some of the features that this synthesizer has, and you might find some pleasant surprises and see that there's actually quite a bit of complexity towards creating something cool out of this little guy here. Phase 4 is the not equivalent to operator by any means, but it does have a lot more flexibility in my opinion as compared to FM4. And the reason why is just because of the feedback modulation system that you have, and it makes it a little bit easier to figure out what's going on. So let's go ahead and load up a default preset to which we get something like this. That was not the default preset. Let's try that one more time. Yay, just a sine wave. Now I have the oscilloscope pulled up, and you can just find that by clicking the little orange button here. But by default, it's pretty much just kind of a half saw, half sine wave. And these are all coming out this way by red, cyan, yellow, purple, magenta. No, that's not magenta, it's purple. Royal purple. And that represents each oscillator, or I think they call it nominator, that you have here. So with that, you can use these representations to easily figure out what you're doing, and I love how visual this is. I'm definitely a visual person, and hopefully you guys like neon lights to trip out to when you're trying to be inspired to make music. So with that being said, between all of these four quote-unquote nominators, these different things provide a waveform, and then you can shape the waveform, and then what you can do is apply a 0 to 100% value based off of the feedback that you have between the four nominators in themselves. So right now, if I were to just play nothing, now we're getting a complete sine wave. And if I start to change the shape, we change it into a saw. It's still kind of a soft saw, but it is still a saw nonetheless. Now, one of the key features to this is that you can provide these feedback, or I guess like phase modulators, into red can go into itself, into each other one, and you're sending the signal out into these. So because I'm going to send red into red, that means it's going to do it on its own. So nothing happens. And the reason why is because we need that mod knob right here. Too far. But basically on a level that is, sorry, let me try that again. Basically on a level that is relatively subtle, you want to, I just said like the same thing twice. On a subtle level, whenever you start to send these things into feedback, then you'll see that you can get quite a bit of power from this. So let's go ahead and try to get this into blue now. And then this time we're going to change the waveform and add some shape. Maybe feedback red into itself. And you can see that just by changing these knobs ever so slightly, you can get some very quick results pretty fast. Now, the cool thing about this is that with all this stuff here, you've got this little XY control over here that controls the global shape and mod. And I think that this is more of a mod remap, meaning that it won't go past the full amount on these. But whatever you set these to, this will kind of dance in between those parameters that you have. So yeah, you see how this little red thing right here is set on this. That means that even at 100% max, it won't go past this point, and that means that you can play within those parameters in order to morph the sound. I'm going to turn this up just a bit. And so pretty much the whole gist of this is by playing with these different tables in which to kind of adjust that. Now, one other thing that's really cool about this is that you can adjust the phase, or rotate the phase rather, from these different positions. And that might not seem like a big deal at first because they're all the same waveforms, but sometimes if you have a complex waveform, say for example, let's go ahead and morph the saw here. I'm going to turn this down. And we are going to change this into something else, maybe like a half, and change the ratio from 2 to 1. Now that we have a complex waveform like this, that means that whenever we rotate the phase, we can actually shift different points of where the waveform happens. So once we start to feed that back into something, say into our first oscillator here, whenever I rotate the phase on this, you're going to see that it also changes the waveform. pretty neat. So you definitely can create some awesome respaces and stuff with this, and even I would even argue morphing bases between just morphing between the shape and the mod. So once you have your waveform that to the amount that you have, like the maximum, the most aggressive that you want it to be, then you can kind of mess around with this in between and find all those different shapes. But what's also really cool about this is that you have a couple of options, either detuning between pitch, which if you do that this way and detune it like this, then whenever you play a lower pitch, it's going to rotate or like phase oscillate slower. And then whenever you play a higher pitch, it's going to phase oscillate faster. Whereas if you do it with the frequency offset, then this is, no matter how detuned this is, it's always going to play the same rate. And so for whatever reason, you might want to do one or the other, and you can mess around with maybe even doing a combination between all of those, but you can still get a lot of really cool results with that. So what I'm going to do is quickly just set up something from all 4 of these and just see if I can get something interesting. And then if I go too far, I'll just back off of a knob. Now let's detune the first oscillator here. Pretty cool. So now we've got a really interesting Reese, and the cool thing about that is now that all these parameters are set up, this is at our maximum value. So now playing with this, I can morph between this XY to find different waveforms. Or I can just find a different piece on this and leave it as is. And I can just leave it as such. So there's a lot of flexibility and a lot of options that you can do with this, and that's something that I really enjoy about this in particular. Never mind the fact that you can just always, at any point in time, go here and just see what you can randomize, but everything is available on here, which is awesome. And because of the modulators and how we have that set up, what you can also do is have these move independently of themselves. So as opposed to everything being bound by an XY pad, you can maybe set some of the modulators, some of the mod knobs here on a smooth curve and just let that kind of ride slowly, maybe at a half note, and see what that does. And then you can adjust the XY pad. I'm not gonna lie, that's pretty sweet. So some other things that you can do are taking a look at the filter section that we have here. And in order for the filter, or actually this whole thing, to even get sound, you wanna make sure that the drive is here, because if you turn this drive off, then you're actually not gonna get anything. The other thing that's really important to keep in mind is that you can actually modulate these into the oscillators themselves, but if you do this and you turn this knob, nothing is gonna happen. So in order to get this to work, you have to change the filter envelope generator, I think is what that's categorized as, on, and now this should start working. And what I'm also going to do is I'm going to change this into just a decay like this, and then maybe adjust this here. I was hoping I can give it a curve, but I guess you can't. but now you can see that this will work. So something that can be really cool is you can turn this down just a little bit, and then you can also adjust this to have feedback. We can adjust the drive a little bit as well. And now we've got a lot of really fun stuff to mess with. Now, you can also adjust these as a modulator to anything over here on the sort. So let's say you wanted to add either the filter or the amp envelope generator onto either one of these. You can do that as well. I'm going to just stick with the randomizers here, but just know that that is a feature. And then you can also change between the different filter types here if you want. And suddenly you're getting a super aggressive bass. I'm just doing a little bit of playing and stuff while I adjust this, but keep in mind that the randomizers are constantly moving this around, so I'm just looking for changes in the sound. I typically don't use this that much, but even still, if you're just looking for a quick and dirty kind of like, how would you say, like a donk, or, you know, something that's like a harsh FM, you know, pluck bass or something of the sort, this would be a great choice for that. And once you have that, then you can get into your normal processing, how you normally would. I'm just going to do a quick cheat and pull up something like multipass and grab something maybe like some kind of filter. This should probably do fine. Turn on the depth, turn on the mix. And suddenly you've got a super awesome bass that didn't take hardly any time to write. So yeah, I definitely encourage you guys to mess with this, and would definitely offer, like, if you're trying to create some kind of cool FM pluck thing, this is excellent. If you're trying to create some interesting Reese, even though you can't draw in your own waveform, there's a lot, just enough like modulation here that you can kind of implement within shaping these waveforms that you will find some really cool and interesting stuff. And as you could hear throughout me messing with the sound, you definitely can tell that it has like an analog feel to it. It's very strong and very powerful in that sense. So I wanted to do this from scratch and also make mistakes and also change things or whatever and find my way through, because I want to teach you guys more about the process, about how I go about making these sounds, as opposed to knowing exactly where to go and then you guys following along. You have to explore whenever you do this. And hopefully you guys have been enjoying like the sounds from scratch as well, because I don't know what I'm going to make. I don't know what I'm going to do, but I want to sit here and not only make something in front of you, but also show you how to explore and, you know, just not really care. Have a good time. So without me wanting to get too redundant, thank you so much for watching this video. Be sure to like and subscribe if you enjoy the content. And the next time we will be looking at making something from the grid, which should be a lot of fun. Thanks, guys. I'll see you in the next one.